Welcome to the Author to Authority podcast. And today, if you are tired of having to do all of the sales in your business, I know I am. That's one of the reasons why I wanted Corey on the show. Then you're going to enjoy today's conversation as we look at how do you break that? How do you, going from being the one who has to do all the sales to being able to trust other people to do it. So I think we're going to have a very good conversation today. I want to introduce Corey Quinn to you. He's the former CMO of Scorpion and now a dedicated agency coach. Corey specializes in helping agency founders scale revenue. At Scorpion, he played a pivotal role in growing the agency's revenue 8 times. Yes, that is an 8 in 5 years to a remarkable $150 million company. Corey is also the author of Anyone, Not Everyone, a comprehensive guide for agency founders looking to simplify growth and escape founder-led sales. Welcome to the show, Corey.
Thank you, Kim. I'm excited to be here.
So, Corey, I'm just really curious here because I want to just ask you the really obvious question, and that is, can you transition? When you're the small business or the solopreneur, the consultant, the speaker, all these kinds of things, can you transition from having to do all the sales yourself to being able to have other people do it?
You absolutely can, Kim. And many agencies that are successful and large, have done it. They've all started, most agencies have started with a one-person company hanging out a shingle. And eventually, some of them, a lot of them become larger companies with many people. And sometimes agency founders stay in sales and sometimes they hire a whole sales team. I'll give you an example. My last agency I worked for in-house, the company Scorpion you mentioned in the intro, we started with a 6-person sales team. But I should say, I joined the company when it was already operating, and they had a 6-person sales team. We grew the sales team to 100 people. And this is for an agency. Yeah. And so it is possible. The challenge I think that a lot of agency owners have and consultants as they're scaling is that they're typically the most passionate person about their business, probably the most, and that enthusiasm is contagious in the sales conversation. They know the most about the product and are able to communicate the value very succinctly in a compelling way, which is why that they start in sales, obviously. But which is also one of the reasons why they sort of get stuck there. There's a couple of other things that get them stuck there, but it is always the charismatic founder that is where sales start. It doesn't have to end there, though.
I love it.
Mm-hmm.
And you are right. The best person to sell your product is you, right?
Yeah.
And so that's something I've thought about on this journey as I plan for the next stage of RTI publishing is how do I teach and train, or how do I let go of some of these things, because I am the most passionate about it. I created it. Out of nothing, I created it. This is my baby, my child. And so I completely hear you there. Mm-hmm. Corey, why did you decide to go from working at a company to starting your own agency?
So I'd been an entrepreneur in my early days. I graduated from college and I quickly came home and I started working in the restaurant industry because I wanted to make some money. But my career really took off when I started a business back in 1998, 1999, back when the internet was first emerging and it was this huge new technology that was rapidly being adopted. In any event, my best friend and I, we raised $6 million to launch a .com startup, as they used to call them. And so that was an amazing experience. We ran the business for a couple of years. However, ultimately, I ended up going back into sort of a traditional career path. I went back to business school and I worked in finance and I worked at other companies. I eventually got married and had a family, and as a result of that, got to pay the bills, and so that was my path for a long time, but always wanting to get back to the entrepreneurial pursuit. The sort of the I had a taste early on, and I wanted to get back to it. So that's it's one of the big reasons why.
I think everyone's journey starts out with either working in a grocery store, a convenience store, or a restaurant.
Yeah, right. My very first job was as a bag boy in a grocery store, and I worked in a ton of restaurants. And it's a great place to work, and it's like you said, it's a place where a lot of people start.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys would have them, I think in the States, but there's a fast food chain here called Harvey's, and that's where I got my first taste of entrepreneurship. That didn't last very long, and well, not entrepreneurship, working. Oh, I know. I actually got into entrepreneurship because I was staying at home with our kids. We had made the decision together that I would stay home. I grew up in a single parent home. My mom had died when I was very young. My dad had two working parents, and we had decided that we didn't want our kids growing up with babysitters like we had. So entrepreneurship, and in this case, network marketing at the time, allowed me the opportunity to be able to work from home, but still be able to bring in some extra money on the side.
That's great. That's great. And today with the internet and just all the technology, it creates a lot more opportunity for that, for a business owner to build and have a wonderful, successful, profitable business and still have more balance in their life. So it's great. My last company that I worked for, I had to commute an hour each way every day, 5 days a week. I did that for 6 years. Right. And so that's just a horrible way. It's a horrible waste of time. Like, I try to make the most of it. Like, I would listen to podcasts or whatever, but it's yeah. So.
Oh, I can't remember who said it to me, but it was a very long time ago. So it was probably back like when you had CDs and things like that. And somebody told me that they had a long commute, but they used that time to gain almost a university level education because they would, they had CDs, courses. I don't think podcasts were back then, but, they spent that time in the traffic, learning, growing, listening to great speakers like Jim Rohn, Bob Proctor, all of those types of people. And they said, I basically got a university education while sitting on the highway.
Yeah. And I took that approach. It reminds me, I think Tony Robbins has a saying. He calls it net time, NET, no extra time. It's when you're doing your chores around the house and you're listening to, audiobooks and educating yourself. I did something very similar, which is, I've been in marketing for a long time, and I was the chief marketing officer at this agency. And so I would listen to these amazing podcasts about marketing, and I would bring these ideas into the work that I did just as a result of the podcast and the commute. So in some ways, the commute was a part of the success of the agency that I helped to grow. So there you go.
One of the amazing things about hosting a podcast is I get to learn so much from the guests that I have on my show. And the audience knows this. Every once in a while, I pick certain guests because there's something I want to learn about.
Yeah, that's smart. I'm the same way. I just had I have a podcast myself, and I brought on an expert in agency finance. Like, I know agency marketing. This guy knows agency finance, and he has a whole business wrapped around it. I learned so much in this podcast. It was fantastic. I feel like I've got an MBA in agency finance. Wonderful. Oh yeah, I know the feeling.
Well, we are going to shift gears here, Corey, because I do want to talk about escaping founder-led sales. I think you and I have enough entrepreneurial experience that we could go anywhere we wanted to and have an intelligent conversation. But we promised the audience in the
Yeah.
title of this show, Escaping
Mhm.
Founder-Led Sales. So I think we're going to transition into that to
Right.
make sure that I keep my word to my audience today. So
Let's
Corey,
go
I'm
then.
going to let you loose. And I
Mhm.
want you to talk about it and just
Yeah.
really share how, how can you go from being that founder-led sales to actually having sales teams and being able to let go of that?
Sure. So I'll share with you sort of my story that is the backdrop or the context for why I wrote this book and why it really does make a positive impact. So I have about 17 years in the agency space. I started after I got my MBA from USC here in Los Angeles, and I went into a business development or a sales role at an agency that sold PPC and SEO to enterprise level businesses, large companies like Hyundai and Lululemon and Remax and the Men's Warehouse, all these things. And the founder of this agency was a graduate from Harvard Business School. And if you're in the United States, even if you're not, you probably know that Harvard Business School, like one of the benefits of going to HBS is you get part of you're all of a sudden a part of a very high quality network of other graduates. And so the way that we grew this agency was that the CEO, the HBS founder, would reach into the network, and he had a direct line to the CMO of this business and the CEO of this business and these very, very successful business people. And as a result of those relationships, I on the sales team, we'd get these very warm introductions and we'd close the deal. And we grew the business, many, many millions, and it was a big success. The next agency I worked for was also led by a founder who is charismatic, had a great network. This time he was the ex CEO of MySpace, the social network. If you remember that platform, right? And
I never actually used it.
you never actually used it? Oh wow, you're like one of the few.
Well, it's probably because I was up in rural Canada. It's not like we had proper internet or anything like that.
Yeah, well, I hear you. We were all back on the dial up back in those days, but the way that MySpace works is they make money from advertisers. Big advertisers would spend money on that platform. And so he had in his cell phone, he had a direct line to all the big advertisers. Well, guess how he grew his agency? He reached into that same pool. At the time I was running a sales team, and we'd get these really warm leads and we'd close them and we'd grow the agency. And by this time, I was like, 9 years into my agency experience. And I came to believe that the way that an agency was built was that you have a charismatic founder that's really well connected and they work their network. And that's how you grow. And it wasn't until I joined an agency called Scorpion, my last in-house role. And I found something different, which was a 6-person sales team where the phone would ring, the salesperson would pick up the phone, and in about 30 minutes, they'd hang up the phone and ring a gong. It was on the middle of the sales floor, a big metallic gong, because they had just closed a one call close. And what the dynamic there was that we were at the time focused exclusively or semi-exclusively on servicing attorneys. We had a ton of attorney, almost 500-600 attorney clients, and other attorneys would hear about us, whether through advertisements and whatnot, and they would call into the sales floor and they would commit to a 12-month engagement with this company. And the funny thing is that they didn't know who the founder was. They didn't care who the founder was. It wasn't part of their purchase decision. What they cared about is, as an attorney working with an agency who understood the specifics of marketing a law firm, that was a specialist, an expert, had a lot of authority and a lot of evidence that they were truly experts. And as a result of that positioning, they were committing. And so the big difference there was that Scorpion had this great positioning and this reputation in this one vertical market. And as a result of that, obviously the founder was not involved. So that led to us taking what we did really well in the attorney or law firm market. And then we went to home services, which is plumbers, electricians, roofers. And we built a separate business unit specifically targeting that vertical. And we did the same thing with franchise, and then medical practices. And so I've taken that success. We grew it, as you said, eight times in 5 years. We went from 20 million to 150 million, and a massive success there. And now that I've stepped back from that role, I've stepped into more of an entrepreneurial role. I'm an agency coach and consultant. I'm a coaching and training program that I'm building. And the work that I do is helping generalist founders, so founders of agencies who have taken more of a generalist approach. And this is a generalist means that they work with businesses of all shapes and sizes, and they kind of do whatever they need. And as a result of that, they're tied to sales. So there's three things that causes a founder to be stuck in sales. And I'll talk about what those three are. Maybe this resonates with your audience. Maybe they see themselves in some of these things. We'll see. First one is that they lack a focus in who they work with. They work with businesses of all shapes and sizes. And as you mentioned that earlier, Kim, as a result of that, as the founder, you're able to navigate that sales conversation with a prospect. Maybe on one call, it is a retail organization. Maybe the next phone call, it is a hospital. Maybe another, conversation, it is a CPA, right? So you're able to navigate those conversations. But when you bring in a salesperson, they're not going to have the skills or the context to be able to do that effectively, right? So a lack of focus ties the founder to sales. That's number one. Number two is watered down positioning. When you are a generalist, you're serving businesses of all shapes and sizes. The way that you position your service, your business, your company tends to be rather, like I said, watered down, which means ultimately the thing that makes you special and unique is very hard for your buyer, target buyer, to see and to understand. They can't get it because you're trying to be too broad. And as a result of that, the markets don't see your specific value. They can't get it. Number one. Number two, you end up competing on price. And then the worst one, I think, is you lose good opportunities to lesser firms that don't deserve it, but they outmarketed you, they outpositioned you, right? And so when you have watered down positioning, you really have to depend on that founder to do, the personal brand, the platform they've built, the relationships that they have, whether it be through HBS or through, EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, or Vistage, or whatever platform that people have their networks. They're sort of stuck being the spokesperson for the brand. That's number two, is having watery positioning. And then number three is not having enough of a sales pipeline or a way to generate sales pipeline when the founder is not directly selling. So if the founder steps away and the sales team is like, well, what do we do? The phone's not ringing. How do we, what are we supposed to do here? If you don't have a strategy in order to do that, and build pipeline, to build demand for your services, that always brings the founder back in. So it's lack of the strategy to build pipeline. So when you have all three, a lack of focus, watery positioning, and no strategy, the founder just gets sucked right back into the sales role. They're stuck there. And you could imagine, Kim, what to do differently, which is to do the inverse of those three things.
It was funny. A few years ago, I was looking at, hiring a salesperson. And I erroneously thought that I could just find a salesperson and they would do what I do as an entrepreneur. They'd go out, they'd network, they'd generate leads, they'd convert those leads, and we'd all be happy. And I would pay them well to do that.
Right.
I found out really quickly that that's not how it works. I have to supply all the leads, or the company has to supply all the leads.
Exactly.
And my first thought was, well, if I'm going to have to do all this work to generate the leads, I might as well just do the call and close them.
Right. Keep the commission. True.
I realized, and it was such a shock to me because, I was thinking, that salespeople could actually do the whole sales
Right.
process from
Right.
start to
Right.
finish. But
Right.
yeah, that
The
was a
reality
surprise.
is, yeah, the reality is, I think there's some studies on this that say that 80% of the buyer is through 80% of the buying process by the time they talk to a salesperson. In other words, they've done the online research. If you have a podcast, they've listened to your podcast. If you have a book, they've read your book. Like all of these things happen before they actually talk to your sales team. And so if you don't have any of that, your sales team doesn't get the opportunity to have that conversation.
Mm-hmm. So, one thing I was thinking about, Corey.
Mm.
So here I am now. I am audience. I don't have the links for you yet. Hopefully within the next couple episodes, but in June, and this will be aired the end of April. So in June, I am going to be hosting a masterclass on the Create method to write a book that converts readers into clients. So we're still building out some of the infrastructure, and it's a month and a half away, but I will soon have the link for you, audience, to be able to sign up for it. It's a free masterclass. But one of the things that we're talking about is, to start to do these, and then, where are we going to take it from here? How do we automate it? When we're starting to bring in enough leads that, I can no longer, do it all, then we can start looking at, so how do you transition? So once you've got those three things in place, because I fully agree. I mean, to be honest, any business needs to have those three things in place to begin with, if you really want to be successful, no matter really what kind of business you are. Because if you are a generalist, you're right. Everything's based on price, and the price don't go up, it go down.
That's
and
yep. And it's only going down.
Well,
Sorry.
not if you position yourself.
Not if you position yourself. Exactly. That's it. Yeah. You can get out of that trap if you position yourself as an expert. That's right.
So once you have those things in place, and like you're in a situation where I am, where I will be starting to generate leads, how do you start to build out that sales team?
Yeah. So once you have focus in a vertical market, meaning you have a very specific and defined market that you're targeting, everything becomes much easier when it comes to marketing, because you know who you're targeting, what content to write, which shows to produce, and all those things, right? Then after you have the focus, then you do the positioning work, which is creating a way for you to distinguish yourself from all the other alternatives in the market. And you need positioning, you need messaging, and a point of view. I'm a really big believer in the power of a point of view. It's only then that you can do some lead gen acquisition strategies that are specific to your point of view and your messaging and your focus. But to answer your question, as a result of the focus, you're able to develop more of a productized approach to your sales. So you're selling a specific service with a specific outcome, with a specific scope, and as a result of that, there's a lot less variation and variables that salesperson has to deal with. If you do a lot of the pre-selling in the content that you're creating, you're on your website, it's, this is our program, it's the Create method, accelerator, or whatever you're calling it.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, here we go. You're able
I'm the word ninja. When somebody puts out a delicious word or two, I have to write that thing down.
Yes, I love it. You're able to take out the variability, and you also increase the repetition in the sales process. So you can bring in someone, typically the fastest way, typically the way that a lot of agencies do this, is they may bring someone up through the organization who maybe is previously focused on servicing clients and actually fulfilling on this product over time. They're typically a great person to bring into sales, because they're the ones that are going to tell firsthand the prospect or the prospective client what to expect, because they've known it and they've worked with existing clients for a period of time. That typically works really well. Another way that you could bring up a salesperson or bring in a salesperson is by finding someone who's already doing a very similar sale, maybe not for a direct competitor, but for someone who can demonstrate that they understand both the product that you're selling, as well as the audience. You have someone who has experience in selling similar product to a similar audience. That allows you to get up to speed much quicker than if you brought in someone who's never done sales and is not familiar with your service.
So when it comes to something like that,
yeah,
just these are just questions that come through.
Yeah.
When you start bringing on like your first couple of sales people, like especially like in a situation like mine, like I'm not a huge company to begin with, right?
Yeah.
So, I may not be able to really do a huge salary. Like, is that going to be a limiting factor, or are there people out there, who thrive on the commission? Because with the packages we sell, the commission would be pretty sweet.
Sure. And so the way that, typically speaking, that you I recommend structuring a sales compensation is, at least to start, is 50-50, where you have something that's called on target earnings, which is what they should expect to make if they are successful in hitting their quota. And their quota is, in your case, sell X amount of courses per month. That's your expectation. And we're going to give you the training, the tools, and so on and so forth to do that. So let's just say, for round numbers, that is $50,000 a year. Like that. That's how much money they should expect to make once they're fully ramped. 50% of that could be salary, and 50% of that should be made up on the variable comp, which is the commissions. So you're, as a business owner, you're really only on the hook for $25K, just over 2K per month. And as long as they're meeting expectations, they're going to get to that 50K on target earnings based on their performance.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to switch gears here because you are an author, and I need to make sure I ask you the question that every author that comes on the show gets asked. So Are you ready, Corey?
I'm ready. Let's do this.
Okay. Well, first of all, take a moment to introduce your book and let the audience know what it's about.
This book is called Anyone, Not Everyone, and it is the proven system to escape founder-led sales. So, Kim, what we've been talking about, and I'm going to see if I can do this. It's the agency edition. And so the reason why I did that, I obviously have a background in agency, but this is a problem, as you said earlier. You mentioned that businesses of all shapes and sizes can struggle as generalists, right? And so I had to get really clear on who I was focusing the contents of the book on. The first early draft of the book, it was for general businesses. And I got feedback from agency owners who I have as clients. They're like, there's not enough examples in the book about agencies. And it'd be great if there was. I was like, okay, I need to drink my own Kool-Aid and actually focus the book on the specific buyer that I'm trying to influence with the book. And so, in any event, the book is my 5-step method for going from a generalist to a vertical market specialist. And vertical market meaning my approach is to identify a specific type of industry or a niche that you can focus your business on, and then do the positioning and so on and so forth.
Nice. Okay, Here comes the question. What was the good, the bad, and the ugly about writing, editing, and publishing that book?
Okay. The good, the bad, and the ugly, was that the prompt?
Mm-hmm.
So the good is it's done.
I hear that one a
lot. So there were a couple of things I think I did that was helpful. Well, number one is I did a round of beta reading, which means I did an early draft, and then I put it out to the people that I wrote the book for. A handful of people raised their hand and said, yeah, I'll read the book and I'll come back. That was really helpful because it made it a much better book. I also hired a really fantastic editor. And the way I found this person is that I went into other books that were written that were very successful for the same industry that I'm targeting. And I found out who the editor was. That's who I contacted and said, hey, can I hire you? And so that was really helpful. She made the book like 1,000 times better. And then I hired really great experts with it as relates to just continue, another editor, a proofreader, which was great, and then a cover designer. Like I didn't do this on Etsy. I hired a professional, not Etsy, but Fiverr. And Fiverr's fine, but I was really particular about that. And so all of those things were good moves for me. I think the hard part for me was it took a long time for me to write it because I'm not a professional author. But I really wanted to bring a book into the world. And so the way that it worked is I joined accountability groups and I did that for a little bit. And I just committed ultimately to writing for 2 to 3 hours a day, sometimes on the weekends. And I just went through the process, but it was sort of, I call it the long and expensive way to do it.
What was some of the results that you've seen from releasing the book in terms of your business?
So I've released it 9 days ago. And
okay. So new baby.
I'm a new baby. And so as a result, my calendar's been full with new sales opportunities. We hit the bestseller list across 3 different Amazon categories. We have over 50, thank you, over 50 5-star reviews. So we did a whole launch squad, whole thing. So a lot of credibility and authority, as you talk about in my space, which is great.
Love it, love it, love it. Well, Corey, we are out of time. So what I would love for you to do is to share a final thought with us. And then, for those who have heard this and saying, oh man, like I got to switch things up. How can they connect with you?
That's great. So first I'll talk about the connect. So you can go to my book's website, Anyone, Not Everyone, and download a free audiobook version of the book. Right away. You can go there right now and start listening to it. There's also an online workbook and worksheets and so on and so forth. It's my gift to you and your listeners. So that's number 1. Number 2 is my advice. This will not shock you, Kim, but it is to that the best way to cut through the noise in the marketplace is to become a specialist in a specific vertical market. That's my experience. That's what I teach. And so if you're struggling with cutting through the noise and struggling with founder-led sales, start by focusing, trying to identify a vertical market that you could specialize in and become the best in the world at solving a challenging problem for them.
Love it, love it, love it. Thank you so much for being on the show today, Corey. I love the conversation.
I love the opportunity. Thanks again. I appreciate it.
Audience, where do you go from here? If you are watching on YouTube, you're going to see a thumbnail come up for episode 498, 3 sentences that turn any discovery call into a high ticket sales opportunity. If you are listening on your favorite podcast app, today I will not make you scan back 60 episodes, about 8. So you don't have a long finger glide this time. But it's another conversation that's just really going to help you take your business to the next level. Thank you so much for listening today, and we will see you on the very next episode. Bye now.